Hey everybody, my name is Devin. Thank you all for joining us today. It's good to see you. For folks who are unfamiliar with our work, CSU is a nonprofit. We're located here in South Central on Vermont and 66. We do a lot of work centered around food justice and community wellness. A lot of that is done through our urban farm over near the Expo Center. So I'm located in our commercial kitchen right now. Natalie's just over in the front in the market. And as she said, we're going to be talking about vegan and dairy cheeses, specifically making some ricotta cheeses today.
So I'm Natalie. Just very exciting things. I know that when we think of cheese, we are used to going to the store, seeing it made, way easier. And so today, this is actually very exciting stuff for a lot of us if this is your first time making cheese, because it takes away that middleman. And cheese is something that is part of the fermentation class that I'm sure if you've already been in the fermentation workshop, if you haven't, it's on our YouTube channel. So cheese is a fermentation thing. And in fact, if you want to take a look at that workshop again and think about how to make sauerkraut, when we're done making cheese, we're going to have something called whey left over. And it's going to look like Mountain Dew, but a lot healthier. And this is a byproduct. This is the liquid part of milk. And you can use it for something called lacto-fermentation. So if you want to look back at that sauerkraut recipe and are very excited about it, you can use some of this to help aid the fermentation in your sauerkraut. So cheese right now, today, what we're going to make is something called a fresh cheese or acid coagulated cheese. So it doesn't fit into that same fermentation category the same way, but the fact that it has a byproduct is very useful. And cheese, for a lot of people, parts of the world, it is a way to extend the life of milk. If you milk the animal and you have it for a few, maybe like a week or two, if it's not homogenized, maybe longer. Well, what best way to keep it from going bad than to curdle it and make cheese out of it? Fresh cheese, even, that could stay another 2 weeks in your fridge, if not longer. Or if you want to make queso fresco at the end of it, or rigashi cheese, or different types of fresh cheeses, is actually the same foundational recipe. So before we get started, I already have some milk simmering. Maybe if you all want to get started, if you are making dairy cheese, you can start by simmering your milk. You don't want to scald it. You don't want to get it to a boiling point. You want to get it to simmer or just below. And actually, simmer is the perfect place to be. I know it's going to feel a little bit scary when we're making all this cheese and you see that you have this much cheese after this much milk. So maybe we should get started. And I'm going to pull you all a little closer to this workstation here, where you should see that there's already milk started. And let me get you a little closer. You can see I'm making a little bit more cheese than some of you all because I have all this nice milk left. So you just get it to a nice simmer, and let's get a little closer. And I've already sorted out the lemon juice and vinegar into this little cup, but we do just white distilled vinegar is fine. And just, good old-fashioned lemon juice. And the reason why we do a little both is because this gives you a nicer curd and a better product at the end, I think. But you can just do just lemon juice. In fact, our paneer that we make here is also just lemon juice. So when your milk is to a simmer, super easy, you just go ahead and dump it in. And you'll notice that it's going to start curdling pretty soon. So you just want to simmer it, and it'll look like there's this oil building up top. That's actually the whey, so don't worry about that. But even just stirring in the vinegar and the lemon juice, it'll already get it started. So you want to just try to, don't worry about it for a little bit. You don't want to stir it too much. Cheese is something that makes itself. And if you are making this at home, you'll already notice that little curds are starting to form up. And the yellow of the whey. Let's get you a little closer to see. How does that look?
That looks beautiful.
Yeah. So you actually have the most of your cheese process. Isn't that kind of cool? That's almost it. You're almost done making cheese. You're halfway through. So once you start seeing those curds, you just want to let it sit for a little bit. Give it about 10 minutes. I like to put, after the 10 minutes boiling so you can have bigger pieces, I like to put a little bit of salt towards the end and let it sit longer. You don't have to. You could even maybe not put any salt in it. And while it's simmering, I just took some cheesecloth And I'm gonna put it over a strainer, a colander, strainer, whichever, something with holes at the bottom so it can drain. And then I'm gonna put this over a bowl so I can capture all that whey. But I'm just gonna have this set up on the side and wait for it to be done. Right now, it looks for real like cheese. It's almost entirely curdled. We do have ricotta now, and we're gonna see what that looks like, what curds and whey are. So all you do when you have this done, you don't even have to worry about, stirring it or doing very much at this point. You just want to make sure that you capture it in the cheesecloth in the colander or strainer. And let's see, let me get a little closer so you folks can see what this looks like. All right. So this is it. You just want to drop that in. And voila, you're almost there. So let's see. I don't know if you all folks can see that. So I actually made mine today without salt because I like it for sweet. But in that last second, that's when you wanted to put in some salt if you did want. So now you have this basket, essentially, that's draining out the liquid. It's either easy, you can just eat it now if you want something softer, fluffier. That's all it takes. You just got to give it a couple of seconds to finish draining. And if not, if you're like, hey, I really want to have this a little firmer. I want more of a crumble. I want more something, maybe more mealy, something more like queso fresco with some crumbled cheese. Then you want to just put a plate on top. You don't want to squeeze it. I know it's very compelling to just pick it up and then squeezing it out. You don't want to do that. The only reason why, not that you shouldn't if you don't want to, because you can do whatever you want, but if you squeeze it out, what you're doing is you're bringing the cheese curds together. You're making it kind of like a ball, but also you end up mushing it together, and it just kind of doesn't really do anything for the texture. It doesn't, it's not the worst thing, but it's just not the best thing either. You might lose some cheese in the process. It might come out the cheesecloth on the sides. And if you want something fluffier and more kind of robust flavor and a nice texture, you just kind of want to leave it to drain on its own. This is the time where you let gravity do its thing and just bring out the milk, the whey on its own. And if you look in your bowl, you're going to see this bright yellow Mountain Dew looking thing, and that's the whey. So I took the liberty and I made some last night so that you all could see what the end result looks like with very minimal squeezing, or better yet, no squeezing and just letting it sit. This is a nice ricotta at the end. And it doesn't feel like very much, but then you get all this awesome whey, which you could just go ahead and drink. Maybe, put it in your sauerkraut like we mentioned. But if today is pizza night, just use this instead of liquid, put that in your pizza dough, and then you can put some nice fresh cheese on top. And so for the most part, that's it. I've had the cheese in this thing since last night, and you can see it looks nice and fresh. It'll last a few weeks, a couple of days. Cheese, the good thing about cheese is that you don't need a lot of rules or a lot of fancy things. It kind of just does its own thing, and that's pretty much it.
So, hey everybody, what I'm doing over here right now, peeling some almonds for our vegan cheese recipe. So, this vegan cheese recipe, there's many ways to make vegan cheese, but this one that we're doing is nut-based. And we'll also talk about for folks who have dairy or nut allergies, another alternative you can do. But for right now, we're going to talk about the nut one. And you essentially, the nut is going to be your base, and you want to use a flavor neutral nut. So we're talking macadamias, kind of cashews, almonds, nuts kind of like that are a little more flavor neutral. And are still really, really delicious. And as Natalie kind of mentioned, there's lots of different textures that you can kind of make with all these different cheeses depending on how much moisture it holds. The same is going to apply for the vegan cheese recipe. So two things to keep in mind. The nuts definitely determine the consistency. But basically, the nuts that you pick can determine the consistency of your cheese. So if you're looking for a softer cheese, definitely choose a softer nut. And also what you can do is soak them. What I've been doing is I soaked these almonds overnight, left them in the refrigerator, Came back this morning and I've been peeling. We take away the peels for things like cashews. I mean, once you crack it open, they're kind of good as is. But for things like almonds that have a nice, really tough, nutritious skin, you don't necessarily want that in your vegan cheese. And that's because the skin is going to be bitter. It's going to change the look, the flavor, and the texture or the feel of the vegan cheese that you're using or that you're making. And so I think we're about good over here. But, after you, I don't know, soak them for at least a few hours, but definitely overnight, I'll show you what you can do. Super simple. The skins easily come off. And so if you're at the grocery store and maybe they don't have peeled almonds, once you soak them, I'm literally just going to squeeze on this, and it just came right off like that. Squeeze, came right off. So super simple, super easy. And what we're going to do now with our peeled almonds is get a blender. If you follow along with the recipe that we provided, it's going to be about 2 cups of nuts. We're using about 2 cups of almonds here. I'm going to pour this into that. And you notice we're not using any nut milk either. And that's because nut milk won't coagulate like a dairy, any kind of animal milk. And so we have to use raw nuts. You also don't want to get any roasted, salted, whatever nuts. They should definitely be raw. That's going to be big on the flavor and texture. So 2 cups of your nut. We have almonds here. You want about 3/4 to 1 cup of warm water. And I put in two teaspoons of lemon juice into here as well. And you want to strain out whatever, pulp is going to be coming out from the lemons as well. But a little won't hurt anybody. So I'm going to pour that in there. Move this aside. And then the last 2 ingredients, at least the last 2 significant ingredients that you'll definitely need, are going to be nutritional yeast, which we have here at the VMP, and you can find, basically anywhere kind of now. We're going to need 2 tablespoons. I've got a half tablespoon here, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 2 tablespoons. I had a half one here. And what we're going to do next is add a little bit of salt to taste. And so I'm just going to kind of pour it out in my hand. Anytime I'm applying salt, I always put it in my hand, and I kind of pinch it rather than just throwing it over. So I think that's enough. We'll check back in a little later to see if I put too much or if it needs a little bit more. But all you need to do next is pulse it. So I'm going to go on mute, and I don't know, Natalie, if you wanted to add anything else about vegan cheeses, but while I'm blending this, just to note, we're not blending this to fully immerse the nuts in here. We want it to be kind of chunky. As you all know, ricotta has some texture to it, right? So we want this to be, blended pretty well so that you're not seeing the almonds anymore, but we also don't want it liquefied, right? So that's what I'll get started with. This is, let me put the screen down. This is our cheese. And I'm just gonna put my finger in here. We're not selling this, so I'm gonna, get my fingers all in here. But as you can see, right, it's a nice creamy consistency. It's still solid, it holds its form. It smells really good. It's really nutty, but also cheesy from the nutritional yeast. I don't know if anybody has tried that before. But I mean, most cheeses are really nutty anyways, right? So yeah. It's a really great option. Great for cheese spreads. Great to put in some crackers. We'll definitely try this one a little bit, Natalie.
I love that. It looks so good. It looks like 100% ricotta cheese from the store, but even better. I love that.
So yeah, that's vegan ricotta cheese, basically. Really simple. Just takes a little bit of prep. And just being mindful of how much you blend it. If I'd have fully liquefied this wouldn't have been the same consistency. So we want a little bit of that, that texture in there. Yeah. So we just really wanted to say thank you all for coming. We host these virtual cooking workshops once a month, and we are always posting them on our YouTube page as well as our gardening virtual workshops. They're videos on different gardening topics. We post, 1 to 2 a month as well, maybe some more depending on kind of what's going on at the farm. And yeah, just keep a lookout for other virtual materials that we're kind of posting during COVID. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Our Instagram handle is at CSU Inc., CSU Inc., and also at VMP CSU. Feel free to always shoot us emails if you have any questions. Our email is csu@csuinc.org. And yeah, just, if there are ever any topics or other things you want to see from these workshops, always give us a holler. And really enjoyed y'all all coming. So thank you all for joining. Yeah.
Can't wait. Cheers to that.